All right, the Tuesday, December 10th meeting of the Economic Development Authority for East Grand Forks is now in session. Please call roll.
Johnson. Black.
Here.
Blair.
Here.
Huxley-Lindsky.
Here.
Heck.
Here.
Grindy. Helms.
Here. That is a quorum. Item number 2, approval of minutes.
So moved.
Motion by Blair, second by Black. Any questions or discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Approved. Minutes are approved. We are going to skip to new business. Item number A, Mr. Skeving is here. I don't want to make you sit through the whole meeting. So, Skeving document, appeal of document charge. You want to take this, Mr. Gordy?
I will, and what we will do is, if Ron, would you supplement? Ron, I asked Ron for comments on this. Ron responded. Unfortunately, it got caught in his outbox, so we got the comments today. So you have a second report in front of you, which includes Ron's comments. So, Ron, would you supplement what I'm talking about? I'm going to read the report, which I don't usually do, but then would you add? The city is charged for the preparation of documents for property closings. The city attorney, Ron, normally charges us $100 per document, and that's a standard charge. The charge has not always been included for applicants to pay. So the first issue before you is whether the applicant should pay on that. And my recommendation is the applicant should be paying for that as a normal cost that's associated with the preparation of documents that they need to do their closings. On October 29th, a representative from the Neal Law Firm contacted the Economic Development Office regarding an anticipated closing on one of the lots being developed in Water's Edge by Roger Skeving. Director received the information when he returned to the office late Tuesday afternoon, about 4:30 p.m., after attending a training session. I contacted the Neal attorney to make sure about the items needed for the closing. The director, I said that the city could probably provide the documents by the end of the week, but the attorney protested, saying that he needed the documents by Thursday for the closing. Because I'm a member of the steering committee for the Northern Valley Career Expo, I had to be at the expo all day Wednesday, so I was not going to be in the office that day. So I contacted Ron and worked late with Ron to get the information and have the documents prepared and sent to Neal's attorney, the Neal attorney, and instructed the Neal attorney the document charge would be $200 for the preparation of the two documents, and that the city expected payment in particular because of the lack of the lead time. Normally and historically, we haven't been charging because we just fit them in. But but like I said, we get back to the first issue of whether or not we should be doing this, and I think in my recommendation is that we should be doing this anyway. Rather than including the charge in the closing documents, the attorney passed the charge to the seller, Mr. Skeving, who has protested and says he should not have to pay it. The two documents are an affidavit affirming that the buyer is a qualified purchaser under the terms of the Skeving agreement, and also a second document is a partial release of the mortgage for the affected lot. Mr. Skeving has a mortgage that covers 6 lots, and on a one-by-one basis, we've been releasing them as each lot gets sold. Lacking payment for the document charges, we've declined to execute the partial release, and Mr. Skeving declines to pay it until the EDA reviews whether or not he should, and he's here today to discuss this with you. And Ron, do you want to talk about the process?
Well, I can just add, I mean, this is pretty accurate, but typically what ends up happening is it standard, whether it would be me to draft it or the Neal Law Firm to draft it in a closing. A deed charge is $100, a release is $100. I mean, it's standard in the industry. And I just put some clarification in there because under most circumstances, what happens is the closing agent will contact, whether it's a lender, like Franzen Bank, the city, which would be a lender in this case, and ask what the expenses that are going to be charged in the transaction. Mr. Gordy provided that information. Under most circumstances, it's put on the settlement statement. It's just the cash to close in the expenses. And it's provided. For whatever reason, they declined to do that and just handed it to Roger to pay.
No, it was on the settlement statement.
Okay, well, this is what I was told. Okay. So essentially, that's what was going on. Under most circumstances, it's just added in, it's paid, and it's done. Paul asked me to do it. Realistically, it took me about, well, I was preparing for a trial that I had to have on, that I had to try on Thursday. He couldn't get it done on Wednesday. Basically, I stuck around the office for an extra hour to make sure that we had everything done. And I told Paul to do that before we even started, that I was going to charge him the $200 document fee to be able to handle it. That's kind of the scenario from my standpoint. I haven't had any contact with Mr. Neal's office. The only clarification that I put in here was that when it said it was something about the attorney charge would be X, I put Neal attorney, just so there was clarification between myself and somebody at their office. That was it. So I submitted the bill to Paul. Paul submitted the bill to the closing, and that's what we ended up. If you have any questions, I'll try to explain it or answer anything.
Likewise.
Okay, so in simple terms, the dispute here is whether the EDA pays your bill or if Mr. Skeving pays your bill.
Relative to this particular lot, as a general policy, though, we need to figure out whether the EDA should be paying this or whether it should be paid by the parties involved. Okay, so that you have two issues before you.
Blair?
If this had not been kind of a rush job, trying to get it to meet the deadline for the closing, would it have cost $200?
It would have cost at least $100 because Gerard Neal's office could have drafted the partial release themselves.
Okay.
They chose not to. They had us do it. The affidavit essentially could have been drafted by Gerard's office as well, because the affidavit specifically said, I'm not a family member to the purchaser, because the original building incentive program indicates that you can't sell, well, you don't get the incentive if in fact you're using it for yourself or for the city. So it could have been drafted by Mr. Neal's office. They chose not to. I do know that they charge at least $100 a document. It's standard, and they had me do it instead of them for whatever reason.
And how did, in previous times, how was it determined whether or not that would have been passed on to the closing? Because you said it wasn't always passed on?
What has happened is when we do the closing and Ron prepares the settlement statement, it's included. When it's done, closing done by somebody else, we haven't let them know about the document charge.
Okay.
And that it has to do with who's doing the closing, because when Ron prepares it, it's easy to include it.
Mm-hmm.
But
And
we haven't
didn't-
done it. And Ron and I have talked about it henceforth. What will happen is when I get a request for information so they can do a closing, I will also give them the information as to document charges and recording fees.
So we didn't do the closing documents, correct? That's why it was,
We didn't do the closing.
Yep.
So, for instance, our office didn't handle the closing because the closing was being handled by a third-party purchaser.
okay,
I did the potential, if you want to call it closing, with Mr. Skeving originally when they entered into the original contract saying you're entering into the builder's incentive program. So I did that one. This was a third party's purchase, sale, if you want to call it that. And I'm not sure who the lender was, but whoever the lender would have been, essentially would have selected the closing agent, and then we were on the outside of that. So that's
Okay.
why I was.
So is there a policy in place right now on this particular issue? Do we have a policy that says that they will be billed for?
Historically, Dale, when we reviewed these and all the charges, we wanted to get the EDA into standard practice on how things were done. And we are still reviewing as things like this come up to make sure that we are doing standard practices for who takes care of which charges. And this is part of that review. It's on a document-by-document basis when it comes to our attention to take care of it.
The other thing that's a little bit different is it depends upon the program that you're going into. Like if it's going to be a MIF loan, if it's just a standard loan, if it's there's been different policies that have been in place. This one was a new one, and essentially the last policy that we had was that any charges that are going to be for closing, document charges, closing fees and stuff has at least in recent past is being passed on in the transaction.
And I believe that dates back to 2015 or 2016 is when we went through and did that review.
Okay, when Mr. Skeving agreed to purchase these properties, has that purchase been done, or does he just have his name on them that as he sells them, then he buys them? Or, and if it is done, the original purchase, was this fee included into that? I mean, was it put on there that this fee would come into play when you sold those lots or anything?
Probably didn't say this specific fee, and I'll have to look. It was probably more general. And just to kind of back up a little bit, Mr. Helms, is that this was a building incentive program. Under most circumstances, or under a normal circumstance, it wasn't with twin home lots or the multiple lots that were purchased. Usually it's a single family lot. Then we would do the closing on that. The developer wouldn't need to pay for the lot. It's kind of financed. We establish or we put a loan or a mortgage on that lot, and then there isn't any payments made on that mortgage until the developer finishes the building and sells the lot. So the incentive is basically we're kind of financing and helping them develop. There's two of those programs. One, there's a pilot program where we actually give a $100,000 loan that goes along with it. Or if we didn't have any of those, the funds available, then it was the $1,000 development program where they would pay $1,000 up front, and then we would carry the costs until it was actually sold. And some of these, and in this case, it was multiple lots. So you had, I want to say was 3 lots, but it turned into 6 lots because Mr. Skeving was developing twin homes. So you actually have 6 separate sales that you're dealing with, so you didn't put it all on the upfront closing statement like you normally would, because we had 6 separate sales, different time, well, we'll have 6 separate sales, different timing on construction. He was constructing 2 lots, and then after those were sold, potentially developing the next 2 lots, and then when those are sold, developing the next 2 lots. And Roger, you can step in at any time if I'm misquoting, but that's kind of the way it was developed.
Okay, so what program was he on then? The 100,000 or the 1,000 one?
Yes, both. Actually, he's on the $1,000. He's not under the 100,000. On the single-family detached lots, what typically happens is I will get a call for what is the balance, the payoff balance, and that is the only contact we have on those. And the company that's doing the settlement statement and doing the closing prepares all the documents. The difference here is that there are 2 additional documents required. One has to do with an affidavit as Ron pointed out, that just show that the person qualifies under the terms of the program. The second is a partial release because we have an overall blanket mortgage on the 6 lots as opposed to a mortgage on a single lot. So we have to do a partial release. So there are 2 documents for this particular development that do not normally occur.
Per sale.
Per sale.
So this is going to reoccur every time Roger sells.
There are 3 more
one of the-
yes, there are 3 more lots that would be affected by this.
So was this expense on the first couple lots, or is this the only one?
I don't.
Or did
We did not charge it, we did not charge it on the first 2 lots.
Right.
did we generate those documents though, or did Neil Law Firm the first 2?
No,
We
you
generated,
guys generated.
We didn't. We didn't charge it then.
I think that the argument we're making is because of the short window that we had, and we had people that had to set everything aside and just drop what they were doing and work on this until it got done. So I guess I would also like to give Roger an opportunity to, as much time as you need to
Sure.
address the board.
Well, when I seen it at closing time, the additional charge, and I was told it was because it was rush notice. I thought it was a joke at first, but I ended up calling Paul, and he said because they only had 2 days' notice, they had to put this charge on. Neil Law Firm tried to get a hold of Paul on Friday and again on Monday. They did get a hold of him on Tuesday, and so he had 2 days to prepare for this. When it comes down to it, all we need is a payoff. There's no interest, so we know exactly what the payoff is. That's all I needed for the closing. The extra forms that you guys do should be identical. They should be, there's no drafting new forms. It's a matter of putting a different lot number on it and a date. Why it took so long to prepare that, it should already be prepared. I have no clue. I never got charged for it the first 2 times. I don't know why it got put on this one. For a payoff, we should be able to call a payoff and have it the next day, no problem. Paul or somebody should have these forms already in their computer. They can just email over to the closing agent. There's no reason why this should take a lot of time to do. It should be a simple, standard sheet. One of the sheets, I never ever knew that we were doing until I sold my first unit. On the purchase agreement that I made, it said that I wasn't going to use this for personal use, the property. I was supposed to build on them and sell them. I agreed to that, no problem. The form that I have to sign at closing time says that I'm not selling it to any relative. Well, I'm a Skevian, my mom's a Bushy, I'm related to a big chunk of this town. If one of my relatives want to buy one of my twin homes, they're going to buy it, and the city can't do a goddamn thing about it. So that form doesn't mean anything. I have no idea why we're even signing that form to begin with. That's something that the city needs. It's not something I needed. So because the city never got their paperwork done in time, and it took the city so long to do their paperwork, that's their issue. That isn't my issue. You know? The other thing is, they're holding this release of this property hostage for $200. And that really pisses me off. And if the city doesn't release it by the end of today, I'm going to look at doing some action for the city. Because there's no reason why that lot should be held up for that $200 fee. You know, I do a lot of building in this town. You have my word, I'll quit building, and you can take those last 2 lots and shove them up your ass, because that's the way I feel about it. So what do you want to do?
Not my decision.
Okay, whoever's decision it is, I just gotta find out what we're gonna do.
But I will correct you on a couple of things.
Thank you.
A deed, there's a charge for every deed, $100. Doesn't matter if it's in the computer, if it's not in the
Then I
computer.
should have been on my purchase agreement when I bought it.
I'm saying any document that is there is a charge. Whether it's Neil Law Firm that does the deed, or me that does a deed, or a mortgage release, there's always going to be a charge for whoever drafts that document.
I've had many banks that have loans, they've never charged me a $100 payoff. They give you your payoff including your interest, and that's it.
No, it's not a payoff, it's a release. You have to record the release, there's a $46 recording fee at
So
the...
does the bank have to
at-
release a property if they own it?
Yes, and there's a $46 recording fee on that, and I'll guarantee you that you're either getting charged that at the original closing, or the bank is charging you afterwards. Because at the original closing, typically what they're doing is they're saying, there's a $46 release.
You're charged for the new deed, you're not charged for the one that you're paying off.
That's not true.
Yeah, it is.
No, it's not true, Roger. I do a lot of real estate closings.
I've
And
paid
what
off a lot of
happens
loans
is when
before
you're,
in my life.
when you're doing, and I'll guarantee you that I probably sold and did more closings than you've owned real estate, okay? Because I've been doing it for 20 years. On the original settlement statement, a lot of times what will end up happening is they know that there's going to have to be a release. So they charge you on that original settlement statement the $46 for releases. It's charged up front, it sits in their trust account, and then when that loan is satisfied, then they turn around and they take care of it.
So then
And-
why
and
wasn't I
this-
charged
and-
$46?
What's that?
Why wasn't I charged $46 then?
It hasn't been recorded yet,
Hasn't been recorded yet.
you
So you
know?
guys haven't recorded it, so there's nothing to release.
We've recorded the original mortgage, you know that.
Okay. well, then
Okay,
it
so
should
now
only
it has to be released, and,
Well,
well,
that's-
you're...
Should be
what you're-
$46.
$46 is the cost of it,
Yeah,
okay?
absolutely.
So, and whether or not Paul is charged that, I don't know. What I do is, I turned around, I was asked to do something, I did it. I charge for the documents, just like I charge anybody else, $100, whether or not it's you or Gerard Neal's office or whatever. I charge $100 a document. You can ask for Gerard Neal's office and see what he charges when he drafts a document, whether it's in the computer or not.
But I've never paid it before, so why am I paying for it this time?
Well, the reason I billed the city. I said, I've got to drop everything. I stopped everything to do what I needed to get done. And I told Paul immediately, if I've got to do this and have it ready by Thursday, I says, I'm charging $100 a document. I was right up front. He said, fine, do it, go for it, and I did it. I got it done for it so that you guys could have it. The alternative was, I'm not doing it, and they don't turn around and close the deal on Thursday. That's what was being threatened from us.
Yeah.
So why did it have to come so quick to start with?
I
mean,
have no
normally-
idea. I
normally
wasn't
closing on homes and whatever else takes 30 days or more, so why did it come up to only like 2 days we had to have to do it?
Well, they tried getting hold of them 4 days or 5 days before, but they couldn't get hold of them, so
Did they leave messages for him?
I have.
There was a message left with Brenda on Monday. There was no message left before then.
And nobody contacted me, and I don't expect them to.
Right.
I would expect it to go through the office. But when there's a purchase agreement for the sale, that Mr. Skeving is selling it to this third party, there's usually a distinct closing date that's in there. So they would have known, somebody would have known, the bank would have known, and then when they transferred that over to Mr. Neal's office would have known 30, 60 days ahead of time.
That's not
Right.
true.
That's what I'm saying.
How many
They had
days?
about a week notice, not even.
So it was a cash deal and they didn't have
No,
to,
Franson Bank already had it approved, so.
But they must have taken them some time to do it.
Well, they would-
Branson Bank had all the time in the world.
So.
Well, Neil's office would have had more than a week because they would have had to have done a title examination on that, and they don't do a title examination in 1 week.
Okay.
So they would have had that information long before 4 days, Roger.
Yeah.
So that was why I charged my fee. And I don't think anybody in the industry here is going to argue that it shouldn't have been the $100 a piece for the
It shouldn't have
documents.
been, because those documents are already made up. All you have to do is change the lot number, change the date. That's
Yeah,
it.
but you got to pay a lawyer to do that,
No, you
and they're
don't.
not cheap.
You don't have to pay a lawyer to do
Well,
I
that.
think a lot of that depends on, as Paul
You
said.
don't have to pay a
where-
lawyer to do it. He'd done the first document. Once he could do all the documents today for all 6 lots.
No, I couldn't.
Yes, you
No,
could.
They're all
can't.
sold
And-
the
and
same.
you charge it for
I
them,
have
too.
no idea who the
Yeah, just leave that blank. We
purchaser-
put that in.
And then I've got to submit them. And then my name's on it. This is and it's just not the time, Roger. You know that. Basically, my name's on those documents as who the instrument is that developed it, right? And it gets recorded. And if there's a title problem, if there's something else, then it comes back at me. So there's more to it than just drafting a document. Basically, what ends up happening
Neil
is...
Law Firm needed a payoff, basically.
Not from me, they didn't. They needed...
They needed it from Paul, and we already knew what that payoff was. You guys put the extra forms in action with this.
No, you need a release. You're needing a release right now so that it's clear title. So you needed
Right.
more than one document. So you needed more than a payoff.
But that isn't much to do.
And Gerard could have done it.
That isn't much to do.
Gerard could have done it.
Yeah, it could have been all set up, or you just put the guy's name in and push a button.
And Gerard could have done it.
Yeah.
Your beef is with your lawyer, I think.
It's not with my lawyer. I've never paid this before, and I'm not paying it this time.
Mr. Black?
So in the past, we've run into document issues as this with the previous EDA director, right? Capturing your documents
Yeah,
with your name on them
yeah,
and then proceeding to use them, correct?
that's correct.
And I don't recall what we decided in those situations. Didn't we decide that it has to go through the lawyer?
All these documents
would
will go
be-
through the attorney.
Right.
His name is on them. I don't have the right to do work where his name is on it.
Okay, I just want to, I know we had
I'm
talked about this at
pointing
one
out.
point before, and this was a problem for us that has come back several occasions because documents weren't done correctly.
That's correct.
Okay.
I will say, isn't that one that says I'm not selling it to a relative, isn't that a generic form that's the same on every single one?
That, I don't believe that's the point that Ron is making.
That's one of the $100 ones. It's a generic one that's already made up.
That's not the point. The point is
That-
you're paying for the attorney to say that this is a proper document, not who's going to be doing it or whose name is going to be on it or whatever. You're paying.
But the
to
city
have-
needed that form. I didn't need that form. The closing didn't need that form. That's city paperwork that the city wants.
It has to do with what the closing amount, and if you.
But I
closing
never
amount-
agreed that.
You were talking, may I
Yep,
finish?
Yep.
The closing amount I gave to Neil's law firm said if you qualify, the closing amount is X, and if you don't qualify, if the buyer doesn't qualify, the closing amount is Y. So in order to get the amount, the lesser amount, they had to verify that they complied with the terms of the agreement.
Well, when I purchased it, I never said that I wasn't ever going to sell it to a relative.
Family member.
No.
Family
It's-
It's right in the document.
Well, and on the other one, it says relative. Are you selling this to a relative at closing?
Basically, it says family member, so I don't know if they're a family member or not. So what I've done is
So does family member mean relative?
I don't know, Roger, does it?
Family member, is that just my kids?
Okay, well, I don't know. I don't know who your
When I
family
bought
members
it, because I
are.
wasn't going to.
I'm not going to turn this into a fight.
No,
What
but
I'm
I
telling
was
you,
buying it for personal, that I wasn't using it for personal use, and I'm not.
and it says family
If I have
member,
a
right?
relative that wants to buy a twin home,
Sure.
I should be able to sell it to him.
Well, maybe,
What do you mean maybe?
depending upon who's your
It's my
family
property. I'm
member.
selling it to him, whether
Well-
you like it or not.
Well, I know. And the problem is then, is you've had an agreement.
That I wasn't going to use it personally.
family member.
I
Right?
was gonna use it for personal use. That I was gonna
With
build
family.
homes on it and I was gonna sell them.
Yep, and it was a family member.
I would have to say maybe, is it because of where the money is coming from originally when these lots were, when the
It
city
is.
took them over, whatever? Is that the reason on the family member issue? It's not
No.
necessarily something that we
All
done.
they did is,
Maybe it's
I put
because of where the
$1,000
money-
down.
Maybe it's because of where the money comes from and they're the ones that recommend.
There is
or
no
that say
money.
that you can't sell it to a family member. You know, maybe it's not us saying that, it's what I'm getting at.
Yeah, it is, because there is no money involved. I
We-
paid them $1,000 per lot. Instead of paying them 20-some thousand up front, I paid them $1,000 per lot. Once the home was done and we closed on it, I paid them the balance. Okay? So all they had to do is release that lien on that land that Skeving Properties has on it, and that was it. Give them the payoff amount. This new form they have me sign when I sell them says I'm not selling it to a relative. Well, I can sell it to any relative I want to. The original purchase agreement that I came up with is I wasn't going to use it for personal use, and then I was going to build homes and develop them and sell them.
Meaning that you aren't gonna build one and live in it yourself. Is
Correct.
that-
That's the way I assumed when I signed the paperwork.
When we came out with these programs, I was still on the board here when we started both incentive programs, the $100,000 and the $1,000 down program. The reason we put that in was so you didn't have a developer come in, develop a home and sell it to his son. And take advantage of that incentive money that was truly there for exactly what you're doing, building, developing and selling. That's what we want. We want development done, we want homes done, but we didn't want somebody to just try to come in and take advantage of a program to build a house for themselves or for their kid when they were probably just gonna do it anyways. There was no sense in tying up like the $100,000 program. There's no sense having a developer be free and clear on 100 grand so they could go be building something else and tie that money up somewhere else
I totally
and take
understand.
advantage from the city.
I-
So just to clarify a little bit on that.
And
part
I
of it.
understood that when I signed it. That's what I thought I was signing.
If a relative of if a second cousin or cousin came along,
Yep.
it would not, that would not come into play.
Thank you. That's all I was
It's
Okay.
strictly when we say family member.
I don't have a
it's
problem with
dealing
that either. You just don't know who this is.
Right,
That's why you have the affidavit.
right.
But it's the same form. And it's something you guys need. That's nothing I needed. That's something you guys want to put together.
Okay, we're not going to get anywhere. I think we need to end this discussion and make a decision.
Are we making two decisions here, a policy change moving forward and then on this issue here?
Yes.
I'm just trying to make sure I understand.
Yeah, we can do both,
Okay.
sure. You want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion, the EDA requires this document to be paid as a normal closing expenditure.
Okay,
I will second.
Second by Blair. Any discussion? Gonna roll call vote.
Johnson, Black,
Yes.
Blair,
Yes.
Buxton.
Yes.
Heck,
Yes.
Grindy, Helms.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Okay, the second item is whether we grant Mr. Skeving's appeal to the charges. Someone wants to make a motion? If not, then the charges will stand.
I'm willing to make a motion to waive the one fee for the affidavit of our document and make the motion that there's still $100 document fee for what Ron drew up.
So split the difference.
Yep.
Okay. We have a motion.
I'll second.
Second by Blair. Further discussion? Roll call, please.
Johnson, Black,
No.
Blair,
Yes.
Pakshavinsky,
No.
Heck,
Yes.
Grindy,
No.
Helms, no. Okay, so
Motion fails. Thank you, Mr. Scanlon.
Yep. You can keep the last two lots. I want that released today, too. You can send me a personal, you can send Scanlon Properties a bill for $200, but I want that property released.
Now, that's a question for the EDA. Shall I release it prior to receiving payment?
No.
I don't normally do that, but
I think we need to notify him that we need the $100 to be able to release that.
200.
Oh, I took the 200.
because the motion
Yep.
failed.
The motion failed.
Did you say that you billed Gerard for that?
No, I sent an invoice to, or
He informed me of the charge. I sent it, passed it along to Gerard Neal's office.
Okay.
And say this charge should be included.
Okay, so,
And he just passed it along to,
So I don't think a bill has actually ever been
think it has
submitted
been
to,
generated.
Skeving Properties. So it would have to be, an invoice would have to be generated to
All
send
right.
it to them for
let's
payment.
wrap this up. Do we,
Does it,
in order for Paul to release that, we need a motion affirming that that's what he should do.
I'll make the motion and we get paid up front. Any place you go and get releases done, you paid up front.
Yes.
No reason why we can't.
We
do
don't
that.
even need a motion for that then, do we?
I think
Just for
because
direction.
of the record, I think it would be wise to have a motion.
Okay, so state your motion, Dale.
The motion is that we get paid up front before we give them the release.
And
Okay.
that we notify Mr.
Yes.
Skeving of that, so that he knows he needs to
Yeah.
fulfill his portion.
Yes, that he has to pay it before he gets it.
Second. Second by Black. Just do a voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried, unanimous. All right. Carla, bills and communications.
Well, do you want to, review the accounts payable first?
Yeah, that's where we're going.
You asked Carl about the bills, about the report, I thought. My mistake, maybe.
Oh, isn't, I'm going with the number 3 here. Isn't that Carla?
No, normally that's what you do internally, because these are the bills that you would approve that were council meeting.
It's just a list on it.
So we're just reviewing them.
You're just reviewing them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any questions on the accounts payable for November 5th, 2019, November 19th, 2019, and December 3rd, 2019?
No.
Seeing none, no action is needed. All right. Number 4, reports, delinquency update.
There are none.
No delinquencies, all right. B, monthly financial reports. Now you can go, Carla.
Thank you. You were emailed by the funds, the activity for the funds, for the funds that EDA looks at. There's a copy of their cash balances in your packet for those funds. That was what was requested, just to show what the cash balance is. So the normal activity for this month. I don't know if there's any questions that you saw or,
Nothing weird or unusual?
no. And it's already December, so we'll be working on year-end here, starting in January and audit in April.
Okay. No questions for Carla? All right. Mr. Gordy, Director's Report.
Including your packet were the director's reports for October and November. Regional, just to highlight a couple things. In the middle of November, the geofencing committee met. Most of the work on the regional map capture was pending actions by the geofencing. The report was presented at a meeting. The city has not received a copy of that report, that we were part of it, but there is a report, a report with recommendations being prepared by some members of that committee that will be distributed to the other working groups and to the city for future use. So it's in draft right now, but that's what's been going on in there.
I wasn't at the last meeting.
Oh, you weren't?
so-
Mr. Black doesn't have anything to add.
Oh, I had other business that day, so.
Okay.
Just in case somebody's looking on the website, the back side is November, right, not September? It says September on the top of the page.
Oh,
Just in case somebody's looking at it, that it's October and November, just to clarify that, right?
thank you.
We
Yep.
don't look that closely.
No, you just said, it's like, when you talked about October, November.
I did, I kind of went, oh, I don't have the November one.
Diane looks that closely.
Okay. Thank you.
And I missed
You're
it,
welcome.
darn it.
All right.
On October, with the Wednesday, October 30th, I think it was, the expo was held. 47 school districts sent over 1,800 students to the Alara Center, about half in the morning and half in the afternoon. There were about 65 or 70 companies showing what they do and showing, introducing students to different career opportunities. And I've had the good fortune to talk to a couple students since then, and they are elated over the experience that they've had and what they were able to learn. It has excited them about different potential opportunities for careers and for opportunities to stay here. Our unemployment rate in this area is below 2% now, so retaining our high school and college students is important as a way to help fill the workforce gaps for us for the future. To that end, I have already signed up for the Career Connection, which is handled by the Chamber for college students as well. So we'll be able to show some college students around. Okay. Midwest, the Minnesota West, or Midwest Entrepreneur Summit was held. That's where I was that Monday, or that's where I was that Tuesday. That was the Tuesday we just talked about. It basically connected entrepreneurs and financing opportunities and how to create an entrepreneurial community. The importance of that is that it's important to have new businesses start and grow, and what we found here in particular is that it's very important to have those new businesses start in this area and grow them in this area and keep them here over the long term. So that's what this was all about, and it was a beneficial session. It is held every other year, and this one was held on the University of Minnesota Crookston campus. I put some materials from Launch Minnesota in front of you. It's a program that is oriented toward startups in Minnesota. The current administration is very strongly interested in having a strong startup and entrepreneurial economy in Minnesota to grow more businesses, like we talked about on the Midwest Conference. So there's some materials to look at, and they're pushing it very hard. The long term, although it's part of DEED right now, the long term is to semi-privatize it and have a public-private partnership to make this move forward.
All right.
Small Business Development Forum, put people together with people who do financing for startup companies and for entrepreneurial companies, and it was good to have people talk face-to-face on that. In Todd's trailer, one parcel was unfortunately left off last year from the incentive program. That was corrected at the council meeting earlier this month. Todd came up to me and said, why is my bill like this? And I said, well, we'll take a look at it. Because he'd looked at it, and I'd looked at it, and other people had looked at it, and it just didn't get put done. So the incentive was done, so it's 1 year on one parcel and 1 year on the other parcel. It's just different years. So that's taken care of now.
Okay.
So he will get his benefit
And he's
that you
happy.
voted for last year, and he will be happy,
We
yes.
want Todd to be happy.
Yes. Okay.
All right. Unfinished business, none. New business. A has been dealt with. B, Valley Auto Incentive.
We provided a 5-year incentive program to Valley Auto. They do not seem to be there. In fact, they seem to be in the process of selling. We are investigating. I have contacted the owners of Valley Auto, the recipients of the incentive, to determine if they are still there. If they are not there, we will have to take affirmative action to end that incentive.
Noticed that the other day when I was at O'Reilly's, that they weren't
One of the
there anymore.
Yeah, we're working on it.
One of the
been there for a
conditions of the
while.
incentive is that they provide
At
jobs.
least not less than 2 jobs for
Right.
5 years.
So are they gonna have to pay back the incentive that they received while they were there?
That's a decision that the EDA can make in the future. The EDA has the right to ask for the money back for the incentive, but he invested a lot in that building, so it's now a much more usable and saleable building. You may want to, we may well want to discuss whether that would be worthwhile to do that in the future.
Yeah, that is a major upgrade to that corner. And I guess we'll always have that.
I think he would understand that we obviously would have to end the incentive if he's
Yeah.
not there anymore, but to
Right.
go back,
Yeah.
again, like we've stated, that he did
Well, I
a
think he
lot.
entered into that agreement with a good faith effort into doing what he did.
Yeah, he
Whether or
wouldn't
not
have-
he's able to complete it due to whatever reasons, I don't think we should, in opinion, set precedents to go back and if he received it.
I just
But I-
didn't know if that, how the incentive worked, is if he got it and didn't fulfill it, if he had to pay it back, was my main
It's paid
question.
out over time, right? It's not just 1 year and we
It
give it all
was
upfront.
5 years of Border Cities tax credits to be applied
So-
against the tax bill.
He's
And he
received-
received 1 year of tax
Of
credits.
$7,300, basically.
Because I think what the way the program works is if something like this was to happen, maybe they did fulfill it for that year. So, I'd have no issue paying that, but if they're not there
Right.
anymore fulfilling that, then
And
it
I
would
think-
make sense to end it.
Sorry. I think we have to be careful to say, yeah, he did great things to that building, and it looks a whole lot better, and it is a much more usable building. But if we start to say, part of the reason we decided not to ask for any money back was because he did all these great, we're opening up a can of worms, because then the next person's gonna come back and say, well, I did this to my building, and now you want that back, and I think
but-
if we have to look at it, agree
Yeah.
that he did a great job on that building, and we thank him for that.
Yeah.
But it has to do with, did he meet his agreement of what the $25,000?
Well, he did operate a business there for
For a year.
a good deal of time,
Yeah.
so.
Right. Well, and I agree. It should be on the efficacy of actually fulfilling that agreement at that point in time. Because the building looks better and everything. That he could recoup that cost in sales if, or, lease value or whatever.
All right.
So that has very little to do with, I think, that decision, or should. I agree with you.
Do we need any action on this today?
Not at this point, just letting you know this is what's going on. We're investigating it, and we will find out and have some information to go forward in the future. Just don't know at this point.
Okay.
I'd also be interested to know, if he did vacate, if he's willing to share why, if there was some sort of change or something that happened on this side of the river that is a problem, or,
We've reached out to him. I'm
I
waiting
figured,
for
but-
him to get back.
be interested to know why, if possible.
Okay.
All right. 2020 meeting calendar,
Most important item, you have to determine your next meeting date.
January 18th, tentative.
14th, 18th is a Saturday. Are you sure you want to?
It says January 18th right here. All I'm
I'm
doing
looking at
is
the, okay,
reading what's in front of me.
and I'm looking at the meeting calendar. Last page.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, January 14th, you're right.
I don't want to meet on Saturdays. I think that would be a bad precedent.
You'll probably be doing your council retreat that weekend.
No, it's 25th for the council retreat.
Okay.
So the proposed dates are January 14, February 11, March 10, April 21st, May 19, June 16, July 14, August 11, September 8th, October 6th, and that has to do with the availability of room. If you remember the last time we had an election in a November election, the room wasn't available because of absentee voting.
Oh.
So to accommodate that, then I jumped to November 17th because the 3rd is election day. And again, I don't think the room will be available to us that day. And then December 15th. So that would be our calendar for next year.
Anybody have any problems with any of those dates?
I'll be gone February.
Well, we'll have to just move it to March for you.
Go on without me.
You're taking that long-awaited yearly
I'm doing her.
hiatus down south?
Yeah,
It's his retreat.
yeah, one south.
That's right, you were
Rejuvenation.
gone last February. too.
Yeah.
Yeah, good for you.
And this
Move approval of the
calendar,
dates.
I'm sorry,
Move approval of the dates you said you need us to approve.
Do we? Do we need a motion for that? We do?
I will,
All right. Motion by Blair, second by Black. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Anything else for the, Mr. Helms?
I just have one question. Kind of going to open up again. I was sitting here thinking about this with the Skevin deal. He said we could take those last two properties and just shove them. Has he paid anything on those?
he has paid $1,000 on each lot.
Okay,
That was necessary for him to be able to get construction loans.
okay.
So he has to do an affirmative action, or Ron will have to take an affirmative legal action, legal document
Well, I
to
think
prepare
it's
him to
more,
get released.
I think it's more than
There's a
that.
lot involved on this. It's not just simply,
Yeah.
you can take the lots back. There's a lot of legal work that's going to have to be done.
Well, I think they've already been transferred into his name.
Yeah.
so there will be some additional documents, so it'll be $100 a document, I assume, moving
Yeah.
forward,
$100
correct?
bucks a document.
I guess
I mean, in all seriousness.
what I was asking is, and the reason I was asking that is because I say we call his bluff. Let's do it.
Yeah, well,
I mean, I know it's,
some advice when you're appealing something before any board is don't tell them to shove it before they've made a decision.
yeah,
But the one issue that we have, as long as you brought it up, the $1,000 is basically just the earnest money that is typically set down on each lot.
okay,
And so I'll have to go back and look at the agreement, so we have the earnest money. However, we also were required to transfer all of those lots into Skeving Properties so that he was owner of them to be able to put a mortgage against them. So we have a mortgage against those remaining two lots for the value of them. So, yeah, I'll have to think that one through because Roger's gonna have to sign deeds.
so it's probably not gonna be as easy for him to get rid of them either as he thinks. He can just walk away.
Well, no, because what we would end up doing though is we'd have to do a mortgage for, if he's not willing to sign, then we're gonna have to do a mortgage foreclosure on those lots.
But he doesn't get that $1,000 back. That's ours.
Well, he wouldn't.
Yeah.
I'll have to look at the document, because the document.
So it's really going to depend based on what happens going forward.
Yes.
So we'll have more information probably as things develop.
There's one other clause in the agreements, in that when he gets the certificates of occupancy for one building, he has so many days to begin the construction of the next, or to get a permit for the next building. So if he can obtain a permit in that time frame, that also triggers.
I have to read.
Okay, I mean, there's a lot of stuff. It's not a real simple
Yeah.
thing to do.
Right.
There's a lot of stuff that gets triggered under there, so it's going to require
I'll reach
fair
out to
amount of-
Roger.
I guess what I was
Just
thinking
talk
is,
to him and
we're
find out
gonna
how he
go through
wants
the
to
same
handle
issue
this.
every time he sells one. We're gonna have the same problem. Most likely, I mean, because it's gotta be documented, so, and that's why I was saying,
Well, actually, if his attorney, if whoever attorney he uses does this, then it's as simple as asking
Then
for what
you-
the payoff is.
Okay.
It has to do with the fact the city's attorney paid this. I prepared these documents, and so it's a taxpayer cost instead of a seller cost.
I think the other issue that Roger was having is, and I probably modified that document because I was told by Paul that it was not a relative as opposed to a family member. I didn't know who was buying them, if it was a sister or a married child. I just had a name. And so instead of saying I'm not a family member, I probably pulled out that one word at one time, this last person that we did it to, and put relative. I'm not saying I didn't, but that wasn't the reason for it in the first place. The reason, as Justin indicated, was I don't know who his family members are, or his sons, or whatever. So that's why you have the affidavit that's, and he is accurate that's not a document typically that you're gonna record. But as a part of the original agreement, it's a document that we require because we have to well, Paul wants to make sure to attest to the fact that they're not a family member that's actually buying the property, so.
Okay, I agree with Mike, if he'd come in a little more.
Can we change that to immediate family member, and that would actually alleviate some of it? Because immediate would be brother, sister,
Well,
child.
I can look at, I have to even just look at the original agreement, I don't have it with me, in place. And Roger.
Do you need a motion to
I
end the
typically
meeting?
have a fairly
Motion to end the meeting.
relationship
What?
with them.
Motion to end the meeting. I'll make that.
To adjourn?
To adjourn.
Motion to
work?
adjourn by Black, second
Second.
by Blair. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
It's a blur.
Yeah.